We are rolling.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Virtue Signal, the podcast about being a good person by three good people. I'm here. I'm Eleanor Russell. I am here with Taylor Meanswell. Hello. And Andre Kello.
Hi, everybody.
We are going to be talking about Theodore Adorno's Minima Moralia, which I think is actually pretty major of a text. And I'm excited to dive right in, as they say.
I think I have minimum patience for that kind of pun.
Okay. All right. Sorry. We decided to do this text for a number of reasons. One, because it's kind of about everything. Two, it's astonishingly prescient.
Is that how you say that word?
You can say it however you want.
Yeah, it's America, baby. Land of the free. We wanted to, it sort of covers... Andre, you had a lot of very strong thoughts about this text.
I did.
He was like running into the room.
I have
telling
an
me
introduction
things.
that I would like to frame.
Oh yes, please
the
do.
book for
This
the
is
listeners.
A mess. Yeah.
as Eleanor mentioned, the Pretians, the Prussians, we're both good people, but we can take different approaches. Is something that really struck me reading this book and kind of freaked me out at some. I had to turn around and be like, is he in the room with me?
Yeah,
right
I
now?
know. I know.
How did he see the whole thing way back in 1944 through 46? Anyways, so that it's prescient enough that we can use common parlance to describe this, and I think that you'll agree, and I think even Adorno himself would agree, that this book is a guy who is posting through it.
Oh, my 100%, 1,000%. That's what all the Frankfurt guys were doing, really. He in particular.
He more or less says that in his introduction.
He does. Yes.
Well, it's also, I think, the fact that it's so deeply personal and that it's there's this whole dedication at the beginning that's for Max Horkheimer. And it's so sweet to me and intimate and kind of sensuous in the way that's he's just so
Is he
says,
authoritarian? We'll get into that.
This book wishes to demonstrate gratitude and loyalty by refusing to acknowledge the interruption. It bears witness to a dialogue interior. There is not a motif in it that does not belong as much to Horkheimer as to him who found the time to formulate it. Tears to my eyes.
Now, they had worked together already, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if I was actually thinking, I just thought about this. Have you guys read The Authoritarian Personality? Because that's also an Adorno being it's Trump. It's just Donald Trump all the way through. It's amazing. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, my familiarity with Adorno, I mostly considered myself an opponent to him because of his views on aesthetics.
And jazz.
Yeah, my aesthetic philosophy and his aesthetic philosophy are in conflict.
Dear listener, tell you right now, cut straight to the chase. No other podcast will do this for you. They want you to listen all the way to the end. I'm telling you right now, you see Adorno start to talk about jazz, go smoke a cigarette.
Seriously,
go to the bathroom.
Yeah. It's okay, granddaddy, go to bed. It's
but
fine.
Don't smoke a jazz cigarette because then you won't be able to read the rest of the text.
Yes.
It does require a lot of your attention.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, Andre, what to you was the biggest surprise upon reading this?
Well, I think that he doesn't necessarily point a finger at the things that we are doing as being the cause of all of our unhappiness and the inability to live a moral life. It's that the cause is always just capital.
Yeah.
And so maybe these things would be acceptable or positive in a more just world where people aren't alienated all the time. Over and over again, the problem is capital, not the kinds of lives we live in a broader sense.
But it's the technologies that capital enables. So individuation and atomization is facilitated by capital.
Yeah, and Adorno says that these are things that, that capital is transforming our lives in every little tiny way, right? The way that we interact with each other on a personal level, the way that we interact with objects, the way that we remember our lives, the way that we have hope for the future. All of these different things are shaped by capital into this sort of nightmare life. Mm-hmm. This thing where he says that the line specifically that I'm thinking of, can you look it up in the text? It's I think it's at the end of 17. It's the one that says, it was, my apologies, the end of 18.
Thank you.
And it goes, wrong life cannot be lived rightly.
Right.
I think that line is what the whole thing is about.
Yeah, and it's also about how you just hit me in the head with the book in the face, right in the face.
We have got to get the video going.
Oh my god. Okay, so
Just kidding.
I think yeah, but he also is very humanistic. He doesn't, it's not like fatalistic at all. It's not like, oh, and therefore we can just do whatever we want, or we have no responsibilities or obligations to each other. Actually, we have every obligation to each other, and we owe each other everything.
And I like the idea that all of these things that he's pointing out could be solved by, abandoning and destroying capital. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, maybe closing a door isn't fascist anymore once...
Did you get to that part? You see the part?
There were a lot. I'll be honest. Once I kind of got to once I was clued into the game that he was kind of emo posting, once I noticed once I noticed him hemming and hawing for long enough, my eyes glazed over.
Yeah.
But he does say everything is fascist.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, but the capital created this fascist world for us to live in, and World War II wasn't a conflict between fascism and the forces of freedom or justice, but rather just fascists fighting with each other.
Yeah.
Right? That what capital did was transform the whole world into kind of a giant pot full of crabs pulling each other down.
Yeah, it's just factionalism.
It made everybody the enemy of everyone else. The infinite cannibalism of the sea, right?
Yeah.
That's from Moby Dick.
So I would like to speak to the aphoristic quality of the
war
text.
of all against all.
So what I wrote when I did my comps gloss of this is I wrote, minimum moralia is profoundly indebted to Hegel. Hegel argued against being for itself as a mode of subjectivity, as it is far too isolationist. A dialectical theory of the subject would never lower itself to the condition of the aphorism, as aphorisms are necessarily isolated. But Adorno believes that if the subject in these particular times is actively vanishing, then it is the job of aphorisms to theorize and describe the essentialism of what moves, of what vanishes, of what is temporal. He quotes Hegel, "The life of the mind only attains its truth when discovering itself in absolute desolation." So I wanted to think about the form of the text as much as the content. Hot take. I'm interested in the posting through it aspect. I'm interested in how it formalizes subjectivity under this regime. I'm interested in how it really is literally just posting through it. The more you said, it really is. Yeah.
I'd like to speak on the form of the text, as you put it. The book is divided into 3 parts, written in part 1, 1994, part 2, 95, and part 3 in
45.
45. My God.
I would love to read an Adorno text from 1995.
Adorno. Oh, he would have
so
ate. He would have ate.
He would have been like, have you guys heard this band Hole?
No, capital is why when you're in a chat room, everybody lies about ASL.
Yes. So toward the twilight years of World War II and immediately after is when this book is written, and Adorno is in exile for the first couple years of the book in Southern California. And so he is right near the belly of the beast of what he calls the cultural production industry, which comes up a lot. But he's in California because he left Germany. And the reason that he left Germany...
Because they were on his ass.
They wouldn't let him into Berghain, and he got really upset. He was like, I literally give the dolls all the
different club they wanted to put him in.
A certain, ironically, the same people who get into Berghain now. Anyways, and so the book is written in this series of sequential essays. They're not of uniform length. They're not of uniform style. They're only united, really, in the fact that they are numbered linearly.
It's as though each one begins with, and another thing.
Yeah.
Literally reads like a crazy Twitter thread.
If somebody were saying this stuff to you in slightly less flowery language on a train,
I was just going to say, this is so red line coded.
You would change to a different train.
It is so red line coded. Like, this would not, there's no other train.
And you know what? Divorce is worse now because of capital. Okay, man. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, I get it. Everything is
Alimony.
bad. He just goes line by line. What it is a different approach, right? Instead of starting with reason, and like trying to come up with a conclusion about the world that we live in entirely through reason, he starts and pretty much ends with anecdotal personal experience.
Well, because that's the formalization. That's all we have now.
Like personal anecdotal experience, it'll be fine if we do enough of it.
Post the concentration camps, that's what we have.
Because he talks about kitsch a lot in the book. When you said post-camp, I was not thinking about that.
No. I mean, post-concentration camp, the only thing that he understands the subject to have is experience. And so he documents that.
But he doesn't spend an enormous amount of time talking about the camps.
No, I'm just saying that that's a shadow of it.
No, it definitely is. And I
looms.
think for him, it's like, yeah, the camps are bad, but have you ever had to have a conversation with somebody in an elevator?
Well, and
Yeah.
to be fair, his perception of the camps does change throughout the book as the reality of the Holocaust becomes clear in the aftermath of the war. He does mention in the 1946 part that I had no idea at the time how bad it really was.
Yeah.
Everybody says that. But, I think that there were a lot of people who escaped who were willing to say all these things. And
nobody believed them.
What it came down to was that there was in the 1940s, in the early 1940s, a massive apparatus in the United States for producing propaganda about World War II.
Yeah.
And so they had an incredible power. I recently read a book that was about the cartoons produced by Warner Brothers, the Looney Tunes cartoons that were produced between 1943 and 1946.
And they were just like a state project.
There was a period in 1943 and 1944 where something like nearly 70% of cartoons produced in the United States were about the war and were directly funded by the federal government.
Yeah.
So, the propaganda apparatus in the United States especially was so big that they had what it fundamentally came down to practically a full control over messaging about the war. Mm-hmm. So if you don't see it in the Looney Tunes cartoon, then that information isn't arriving in the ears of the American
you
people.
really get that from when I was a kid. I read the American Girl doll books. And the one about Molly, she was a girl growing up in America during World War II. Her father was a doctor. He was deployed, being a doctor to the troops. And you get the sense that her life is directed by the radio. Everything, she's like, oh, I have to go be home so I can listen to the radio. And it reminded me of how in the early modern period, they would talk about church bells. You would hear a church bell, be like, oh, gotta go to the market, or hear a church bell, oh, gotta go to mass. It was this audio culture that structured your life.
A beginning to mass culture.
Yeah, but it was fundamentally audio first, which I thought was really interesting. And he doesn't really talk about that aspect of it. He's more interested in the totalization of his experience.
But he does talk about new and emerging
mediums.
Yes,
he does.
Right,
He does.
and at some point, the clock chimes would have been as novel as the radio.
Yeah. It's all part of this. It's all really, as Kanye said, one of the most insightful things anyone has ever said was said by Kanye West, unfortunately. Everything is exactly the same. He's right. He was right.
I think you're right, though, Taylor, about this thing about thinking about the moment the very first church bell was installed and about how difficult the technology was. If you look at the end of the film Andrei Rublev by Andrei Tarkovsky, there's this whole big sequence about building a church bell and about how incredibly difficult and high stakes that process is. The molding and the breaking and the pouring and then testing it. And, it even as late as the 17th and 18th centuries, they weren't great at this. Look at the Liberty Bell, right? The Liberty Bell has a crack in it because they did a shitty job.
That's how the light gets in, though.
Yeah, and it's how the sound gets out.
Yes.
Right, the light and the sound are passing each other as they go by. I think that you can imagine a scenario in which there's some 17th century peasant and they finally put a bell in the church in the town, and he's like, oh, fucking shitification every day. Things are just getting worse all the time.
Hell's bells. Yeah.
Right. Private equity took over the Liberty Bell Corporation right before they made that.
Right. Now, my personal experience of church bells, I remember being a kid in my father's small town in France, and waking up on on a weekend.
Where nobody believes in God, by the way.
Yeah, that's
in
right.
that town.
No, yeah, they have a 500-year-old older church, and nobody goes because everybody is atheist. But they still ring the church bell, and it's a glorious, beautiful, profound, holy sound. It reminds you all through the day about the beauty of the sound of the bell, the beauty of the church. It makes you think about, and it's part of the environment. It's like a temporal part of the environment. The way that when we lived in Taos, the clicking of the crickets, or when I was a kid in South Carolina, the frogs, or the airplanes that would fly over our house, or the trains that would run by the.
Mine was the sound of the Metra. I'd hear the Metra, and that would structure my life. It also, or like I loved when I first was going to New York, and when we were about to move there, and I was staying with my friend Parvani in Bed-Stuy, and this was in 2010, and you could still hear the call to prayer. You'd hear the call to prayer from various mosques around the area, and I loved that. I don't know if that's still true in Bed-Stuy, but it was then. And this is sort of a weird connection, but I have a similar sonic structuring in my life so we live right around the corner. I'm trying not to get doxxed, but we live right around the corner from a school for kids with autism. And there is a kid there who has like a stim, I guess, that he makes where it's like this high keening sound. It's like, oh, oh. And he makes this sound. And I hear it throughout the day, and it's like how I know, like, oh yeah, it's a weekday, like the school is open, because I hear this kid's sound, and I love it. I'm sure it drives his parents insane, but I love it. And it like structure. It's like I'm like gonna be sad if I never hear it again, because I'm like, I love that sound. It's like my favorite sound, and it structures my day. I don't know. It's like that.
And there are tons of things in contemporary life that Adorno identifies as being like part of the furniture, as they say.
Part of the furniture.
Right. And I think what he's doing in the book is he's attempting to go piece by piece through all of these things that we accept as being background noise in our lives, and identifying exactly the way in which capital has caused these objects and these experiences and these feelings and sensory information to drain our ability to make choices and be good people. Right? Each of these little things by itself wouldn't be enough, but the fact is that it's every single part of the way that we live our lives. And he proves it by going piece by piece through everything and describing how he's correct.
Yeah. There is nothing innocuous left was one of my favorite lines he says.
Yeah. Like the thing at the very beginning that he says about human interaction, about how, like, in the 19th century, not everything was structured by capital. And so you could have interactions with people, and they were simply human interactions. And now every time you interact with somebody, you're like, is this person going to do something that's going to destroy my life?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Is this person going to go talk to my boss about something I said and get me fired?
Yeah.
Is, like every interaction you have is a interaction that you have that's shaped by capital, partly because everything you do is about exchange.
I'd like to also think about this in terms of patriarchy too, because I was thinking about how there's nothing innocuous left. Like I was thinking about how Taylor can speak to this too. Like there's a time when sometimes like a man will say something and you're like, is my desire to clown on this guy worth it? Because is he gonna like overreact and like fuck me up, or can I maybe safely humiliate him?
Now, this is an excellent point. Like Adorno is like, he's presuming an enormous amount about how people lived their lives in the past, right? And then contrasting it against the present of the 1940s, right? Obviously, like if you look at, say, that book Window Shopping by Anne Friedman, right? She describes how there was not this extraordinary freedom for women in the 19th century until the establishment of department stores and arcades and different places for women to walk around where they didn't need to be like accompanied by a man, because they were engaging in capitalist consumption and therefore enjoyed a certain amount of freedom that they didn't have access to in the past.
Yeah.
Right. And that movies, this was her point, was a further extension of that capacity for travel and for exploration and for freedom.
That's why I always
which is the opposite of what Adorno says.
Yeah, it's actually like, it reminded me of like how people talk about like women's cinema, and it's like There was a period of time when cinema was just women's cinema.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
movies were just like they were well, more or less they were the monoculture. They were for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. And Laura Mulvey in Visual Pleasure Narrative Cinema says that because they were created and shaped by men who were directing and men who were writing and men who were producing, that women spectators had to assume a male position in order to experience the thing that was happening in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But it's entirely possible that male viewers isn't so much of when John Waters talks about old movies, he's talking about watching movies for women and assuming a female viewer perspective in order to enjoy them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that Adorno is talking about very true, very real stuff, but he's presuming a lot of universalism about his particular
he is.
male perspective on the experiences of people consuming media.
And to be clear, Adorno was not like a man's man. Like, I don't know if you've seen pictures of him in his bathing suit in LA. Like, he's not exactly like John Wayne, you know?
You read this, dear listener, and get the impression you could bench press him.
Yeah, 100%.
He's a total dork and a dweeb. He's a nerd.
I love him.
He does complain about things in a way where you're like, do you ever go outside?
Yeah. Well, there is nothing innocuous. That's the mentality.
Right.
I wanted to, before we get too far past this, speak on your point about women
be shopping. Yes.
As actually undercutting the cultural hegemony of the patriarchy, right? Because suddenly, even if it's in this limited and cynical way, women do have this agency, right? Where they're unattended during the daytime and can go and make decisions and influence the world through their purchases.
Yeah.
There is a tendency for capital to, or there was a tendency for capital to sow the seeds of its own destruction through these technological advancements. Now, the period where that ceases to be the case, where capital ceases to be a socially progressive force, I believe, is known as late capitalism.
Yes.
And prior to reading this book, I would have told you that late capitalism began in the 90s with NAFTA or something like that.
No.
But Adorno refers to this late period of capitalism in 1944.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm wondering if you... So we do you agree that women be shopping was the first step towards, them forming a social coherence enough to, become suffragettes or something like that?
Well,
do we agree with that? And if so, when did that stop being the case? And is 1944 a good, World War II's onset?
Well, if we think of it as a historical question,
Okay.
right, then my perspective, and I could be wrong, maybe I'm an idiot, I think that the Industrial Revolution that occurs in the United States of America produces a change in the way people live their lives that is more or less complete by the end of the Great Depression. Mm-hmm. So, but the thing is that it's different from, wealthy people and poor people have a different experience of this, right? The change that occurs for wealthy people is more or less over by the beginning of the 20th century. And then for poor people, the change is still happening as late as today.
Right. The future is unevenly distributed.
The future is unevenly distributed. Yes, that's correct. That's William Gibson, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just thinking about William Gibson because I was thinking I want to watch Johnny Mnemonic in black and white again.
Yeah.
It looks so good in black and white.
So to respond in blunt terms, the wealthy person doesn't need to access the commons the way that a poor person does. And so at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, they're able to kind of check out, whereas for the rest of from 1890 to 1930 or whatever, we see the closing of the commons.
Right, because for the rich person, the commons is Little St. James.
Well, I think that there are also splits in between, and this is something I think Adorno sort of addresses. between the freedom and like moral possibility of interpersonal relationships versus the freedom of individual sensory experience. Right? Like, the thing that he talks about over and over is the way that we are like hurting each other by the way that we live in the world. Now, what Anne Friedman said in Window Shopping was that the freedom that comes with shopping is a freedom to experience sensations, right?
Yes.
She's talking about the cinema taking the place of things like 19th century technologies like hot air balloons or like a real tall building. That was like something, you go to the top of the Eiffel Tower, you look around.
Carnival.
A kaleidoscope.
Yeah.
Sure. And then, the cinema comes along and provides all of this freedom to experience things. And that's not nothing. Now, Adorno does not like the cinema. Adorno in Minima Moralis at the beginning says every time he goes to the movies, he comes out the other side dumber. And I think that with Adorno, we see a lot of like his personal like feelings about different things, coloring his opinion about how they relate to capital and morality and contemporary life.
Again, points to continental philosophy. In continental philosophy, they're open about that. In analytic, they just lie. They just lie the whole time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I want to give credit where it's due, which is like, at least he's like, hey, this is my experience. It's kind of a mess. That's kind of the point.
Yeah, he gets credit for that.
He's very open about where he's coming from in terms of his, like, I won't even try to describe it because the truth is I have no idea what it's like to be in exile like that. But he is open about that, even if he doesn't pause after every point to be like, and by the way, I'm really messed up right now.
Yeah.
I think that his attitude was pretty uncommon. It wasn't like a mainstream attitude when he wrote the book. But by the 1980s and 90s, it more or less becomes the like hipster attitude in general, which is like Gen Xers, I think, took on Adorno's point of view of the world.
Like in Reality Bites kind of thing.
Reality Bites, Daria.
Yeah.
Like everything in the 90s that's about like Slacker by Linkletter, right? Slacker is a sort of an attempt to point out the way in which like
Kevin Smith movies.
Yeah, that human interaction has been completely co-opted by capital.
Well, I mean, Adorno says this is notes from damaged life. This is not life in its glory or in its fulsomeness.
Yeah, it's a cynical and a pessimistic understanding of the world that we live in.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, why it was so
material condition
attractive to Generation X.
Yeah.
They were they had to grow up entirely in the world that Adorno is describing. If we say that the future is unevenly distributed, then we know that when the boomers were growing up, they experienced the things that Adorno is talking about. But in America, we were going through an extraordinary turmoil all the way up through the end of the 60s. The civil rights movement, the sexual revolution, rock and roll music and all of these other things that changed how people live their lives. All of that stuff is more or less over by the early 70s. And so Gen X grows up exclusively in this world that has transformed. And so they don't feel like they have the power to change the world because they didn't change the world. Gen X has yet to change the world. And now they're old and they don't even get to be president.
Yeah.
Right? We're still we still have boomer presidents because Gen X, their entire world perspective was this cynical, pessimistic, Adorno-like view that there's no reason to engage with anything. Withdrawal and disgust is different from apathy.
I don't think that Adorno thinks that you should withdraw and disgust.
But he does literally withdraw and disgust.
Yeah, but he's also in exile. Gen X is not in exile.
Well, he talks specifically about the intellectuals in exile and how denigrated and deteriorated their life is.
Yes.
Right? He has a section in the text about the emigre, right? And how They are humiliated in every interaction they have. Like he's describing it as this absolute experience, but it is very much just how he feels about living in Los Angeles.
Well, he says he does it. He argues that intellectuals must isolate themselves in order to show solidarity. Only suffering should be shared. Any creation or criticism must be done in solitude. That's his cope.
Girl, chill.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, if the wealthy are living a different life from us, and they get to have community, and they get to have legitimate one-on-one human experiences
Because they're so wealthy that they can't really do anything for each other. They can't have that power over each other.
Well, because they're wealthy, they're not alienated from their labor.
I think but I think when it comes to the role of the intellectual specifically, which is sort of people, God, the role of the intellectual is like sorry to be this way, but it's like one of the most misunderstood things that I think in contemporary society that we understand, because we're both elite and also out of touch. We're both like, have too much authority, but also have nothing to do with anything. It's like, which is it? But he says he thinks that intellectuals are both the last line of defense against the bourgeoisie because of our capacity for analysis and theory, but as well as the last members of the bourgeoisie.
Ooh.
So I think he's hip to an extent to the sort of vagaries and ambiguities of that life.
There is one section I remember where he does talk about, like, he criticizes the bourgeoisie for abandoning absolutism.
Yeah.
You know, he says that everybody in the bourgeoisie is just, like, cool with it.
Yeah.
With whatever. You know, the bourgeoisie are like, yeah, that's no problem if not. You know, they don't... it's the part where he talks about tact. Mm-hmm. Right? He's like, there used to be these, like, rules. Mm-hmm. About like different scenarios about how you're supposed to behave, and now instead of that we have professionalism.
Right, but now in 2026 we don't even have that.
Yeah, God.
We don't even, like, this is the thing I'm always embarrassed about with my students, where like they come from different countries. Like I had a student and he was just like, I didn't know it could be this so unserious, and I was like, humiliated. It's embarrassing. And I used to be like, I don't like professionalism as a thing. I don't like having to work when I want to die. Like, I don't know. There's all kinds of things that I think professionalism is a bad thing for. But
it's sort of a cult ideology that trains people to imagine that they have an obligation that's more important than themselves or their families or communities.
Yeah.
Like you have some obligation to the like economic welfare of the corporation you work for.
Yeah.
It's certainly a product of the superstructure, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a supplement for community. But also I'm just like, there needs to be some sort of decorum. We owe each other respect. And if with no professionalism and nothing to replace it, there's no more respect or sort of order of...
Well, that's one of the things Adorno brings up, is the way that traditions are constantly being broken down and replaced with nothing.
Yeah, there's nothing to replace it.
Right. Now, I was hoping that you could talk for a little bit about your ideas about satire because of that part that I highlighted at the very end. I think it's number 137,
I have the
138.
page folded down. Oh, Juvenile's error.
Yeah.
Difficult to write satire. Not only because our situation, which needs it more than any ever did, makes a mockery of mockery. The medium of irony has itself come into contradiction with truth. Irony convicts its object by presenting it as what it purports to be, and without passing judgment, as if leaving a blank for the observing subject, measures it against its being in itself. So he's saying like satire is this frame or this mirror we hold up in order to assess our situation.
But we don't have access to the truth anymore, so satire
So what is it
doesn't work.
reflecting? What is it reflecting? There's nothing to reflect. And also, what goes to my thing, so I have a whole lexicon for like satire, pastiche, and what's the other one? Parody. So satire, in order to exist, must both expose and critique. Parody is really just critique. It's just, this is how this stupid thing should be. And pastiche is just exposure.
Right, just a collection of
It's
examples.
just like, look at how dumb this is. And so effective satire has to expose and critique. But per Adorno's point, if there's no reflection, because our frames of reference are all a mess, our understanding of art and reality and truth are all like in
we're so isolated
flux.
from the lives that we live that we have no access to physical reality or truth.
Like AI is a great example of this. Like they're trying to rewrite our reality and mimesis itself into just one intangible entity. And so one thing though that has changed my mind a little bit about AI, and I have been railing against AI for a very long time. I wrote a whole ass piece about it. It's on Defector. You can read it now. I have been obsessed with these Iran AI Lego videos. Have you seen these? I think they are like disproven. I think they're genuinely funny, but I think they're funny in ways because a human being is also behind it. Like the humor in it is like, oh, I recognize that's Donald Trump, or like, oh, I recognize that that's Israel, or oh, I recognize that that's like a fart, or like, you know what I mean? Like it's the human puncturing through, perforating it. So, but then, so like, I can't decide. I'm like, would these be better if they weren't AI? Probably, but I don't know what they would look like.
Well, I really like the idea of some kind of Be Kind, Rewind, Michel Gondry style, like making an incredibly ambitious stop motion animation with Legos that's about how the president of the United States should be, murdered by a missile from Iran.
Well, I loved, this is so old now. Remember Team America World Police?
Sure.
I'd love something like that for right now.
It would be better. Yeah. I think that one of the things that Adorno talks about in that part about satire is that he says that because it has been completely reshaped to serve authority, the only thing you can do with satire is punch down.
Yeah.
People who use satire are almost uniformly aligning themselves with authority.
Which is SNL in a nutshell.
Right, because authority has taken the place of truth and reality.
Mm-hmm.
Put a quarter in the prescience jar, folks.
Mm-hmm. Putting
He's
it in
done
right
it
now.
again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, yeah, which, like, in all of the different ways in which he's talking about our time, but we always feel like the thing that is really bad about our time is brand new. Mm-hmm. Like, the way that there's all this, like, rolling in nostalgia for just, like, 10 years ago, right? Like, oh, if we were just back in 1999, or if we were back in 2015, right? And meanwhile, at those times, like in 1999, the Gen Xers are saying nothing has ever been this bad.
Yeah.
And they weren't wrong necessarily.
Well, that's kind of what trauma and genocide and horror every second of the day is. It's the ever renewable present. That is the metaphysics of presence that, like, Derrida is critical of. It's this constant onset of the new, but only in the sense that it's like a reminder of the horrors of the past. Like, it's like, oh shit, like you're constantly getting, oh fuck, everything sucks. Like, it's like all day long, oh shit, that sucks. It's never like new and like productive. It's always just like, oh fuck.
Which makes Hegel look like a complete idiot.
It does. Hegel.
And it's so weird to read all your favorite philosophers, and every time they bring up Hegel, they'll be like, and Hegel, peace be upon him, the greatest mind that has ever erupted on the planet Earth, the only person who ever had a good idea.
Yeah.
Right? And then they go on to disprove everything Hegel ever said.
Unlike Marx was the opposite, where they're like, Marx, who probably has already written this,
Yeah, Marx wrote about Hegel the way that everybody else writes about Marx.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do you have any favorite parts of this book, Taylor?
Well, I wanted to speak my big yes. I'm not going to cite a specific stanza, but like Andre said, I went into this book thinking that I was in a unique historical situation where I'm looking around and I'm saying things like, particularly short form video content and the internet attention hierarchy are profoundly alienating and ruining our ability to have relationships with each other and our ability to see the world around us, right? That was my impression going into this book. And then I read the book and I was like, telegrams and letters are impeding our ability to form real relationships with each other and have us along this hierarchy of social capital. And so that's the prescience. Put a quarter in the jar. The prescience is my favorite part of the book. It made me feel like if you just swapped out the words, the cinema for like the pivot to video or something like that. You could say the exact same things. And that's what really fucks me up about realizing that 1944 was late capitalism, right? There's these books that I've been reading lately. I have this phenomenon of realizing that there's nothing new, or rather, there hasn't been anything new.
That word you just used, pivot, is something that I've been interested in lately, because pivot, when I was a little girl growing up taking dance classes, I was like, I know that's a pivot. It's a dance move. And I see it being used now more and more in like workplace culture as like we're going to shift to a new technology, or we're going to shift to a new energy or new direction, whatever. And I think it's interesting that it's the proliferation of this word specifically, because it's like I'm saying, we're not doing anything new. We're not creating something else. We're moving to something that's already available on the menu, and we're choosing that instead.
And it's also explicitly not a critique of the decision-making process that put you in the first position.
Neutral. It's neutral. And I think I just think it's really fascinating that's like...
Well, leadership has to have some sort of a way to explain why they're making a change. They can't acknowledge that they don't know what they're doing, or that they made a bad decision, or that, things didn't work out and they have to like panic and scramble and fix everything. Instead, it's a pivot. It's a dance move. It's like, this was all the plan from the beginning. It's been choreographed, right? Like, it was necessary to do the one thing, and now it's necessary to do this other thing, and this is all part of the idea from the beginning, and there's no reason to panic.
Meanwhile,
it reminds me of like Khrushchev's fake de-Stalinization, where he was like, well, you can't. Well, he kind of actually, you know what? I'm contradicting myself, because he did get up there and be like, "Yeah, we fucked up, gang. My bad. All right.
Sorry, team."
Pivoting, but the point of being like, well, we're actually gonna do this now instead, and whether without critique, without reflection.
It's also very much the thing that you do with like toddlers. You're like, you don't say pivot, but you're just like, okay, friends, like now it's time to transition to this, and it's all planned, and this is what we're gonna do. And it's a way to sort of reduce the idea of choice that the child has, so that they go with what you want them to do.
And the infantilization of the individual is a big thing that Adorno was talking about in the book.
Yes. And I was like, oh my God, what would he think of like Miss Rachel, and how like grown-ups are like watching Miss Rachel? And like, I love Miss Rachel. She's a living saint. She really is. But like, I don't watch her videos because I'm not two,
Well, and how would he feel if if he saw us today and the only genuine statements of principle and morality, maxima morality, in this case, were coming from this children's entertainer.
Yeah.
Right. I think that he would. Turn red.
Yeah. He
or if he ever went to the beach in that ridiculous swimsuit of his, he might turn red.
Yeah.
Right. Like.
Yeah.
God, rest in peace, Adorno. You would have loved gummies. Like, chill, girl.
No, he might have been like me, where he gets like paranoid and freaks out.
Oh yeah.
Well, there's this thing sort of in democratic politics going back. Democratic Party politics.
Democracy. Okay, Democrats.
Yeah, going back quite a while, which is this like aversion to purity tests, where they are like, our number one job is to win elections. We don't win elections, but
right.
But what we can't afford is to have morals. We can't have values. We can't believe in anything, because that will jeopardize our ability to build a consensus among a majority.
Well, morality is decadence to them.
Right. And so now they're talking about Hassan Piker in this way, right? And
well, I did not know. I was like, I don't know who the fuck that is, until Andre had to explain him to me the other day. I was like, I don't know who this is.
This is how I feel about every story you tell about all the people that you know in the world.
Okay.
This is where I have, I wish we had videos so I could recreate the Jim Downey, the New York financier. To be like,
yeah.
Hassan Piker, the dog shocker? Just kidding. It's probably overblown.
I don't know very much about this guy either. I like Eleanor, I try to spend my time on things in my life and not dive like Johnny Mnemonic into the world of the internet. But
he's online all day.
But January 6th, 2021, I turned on the Hassan Piker stream.
Oh, okay.
That was the only channel to watch that day.
I think that there is a reluctance in the Democratic Party to acknowledge that there is such a thing as right and wrong.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's not practical.
Right. And so instead, what we have is these abundance weirdos who are saying things like, why don't we try to like abolish labor laws and get rid of the EPA and get rid of zoning and
Did they really say that about the EPA?
yeah, they want to eliminate every obstacle to abundance, right? To doing things. Meanwhile, when they are in charge, they do nothing.
They do nothing, and which is why it's so amazing that Mamdani is like recodifying productivity and efficiency in a leftist framework. And I'm hoping it works.
He's really opposed to neoliberalism. When this idea that the government can't do anything, that everything has to be done by private capital. And the Democratic Party is 100% on board with this idea, which is why they're opposed to morality.
Yeah.
Right? When they've fully aligned themselves with capital in the context of neoliberalism, there's no room for them to have values. They can't oppose a genocide in Gaza because they need Israel on their side because of capital. There's all these other ways in which they are over and over again telling everybody in America, we don't get to choose what our policies are.
This is my friend Sarah Black always says, or she has a saying where she says, Democrats represent corporate interests and the Republicans are stalked by buzzards. And those are our options. That's kind of it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the Democratic Party talks about being this, we are on the side of right and wrong.
Like Cory Booker.
We want to defend human rights. We want to provide people with the freedom for, reproductive choice or whatever, right? But, when the Democrats had control of the entire government, they didn't put in, the kind of universal single-payer health care that would actually provide that freedom for people. They just provided resources for people in health insurance companies to get rich.
I was at a party once when Jean-Jacques was very, very, very tiny. I think he was there with me. I was holding him, and we were in the middle of an insurance nightmare where they refused to cover his cleft surgeries because they were deemed cosmetic. And this is one of the most traumatic experiences I've ever had in my entire life, was going through this insurance stuff. And I remember I was at a party and I was talking to some my friends out there, like, what's going on with you? And I was like, oh, I'm on the phone all day long, blah, blah, blah. And the person there who worked for an insurance company just visibly ran away from the conversation. She literally just darted across the room when I started talking about what I was going through. And I was like, I felt so alone and alienated and like I was nothing. And is this person, everyone at this party made more money than God. And I was a grad student. And it was just like, oh, and I considered these people my friends. Like, we hung out, we went to the same college, It was insane. And the fact that that's normal and that I was deemed like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have been talking about this. But you literally asked what I've been up to. And I was like, that's what I've been up to.
and Adorno addresses this. And when he's talking about human interaction being shaped by capital, because it's impossible to ever be honest with other people because there are material consequences to social interactions in a way that has never been true in the past.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that was sapping people of their ability to connect with one another.
I don't think that's true that it has not been true in the past. I think when you get what you get from any of the plays about royalty in Shakespeare and Marlowe, or anytime you're talking about the English monarchy, there are absolutely things that you can and cannot say that shape your material reality.
Yeah, but that wasn't something for the working class to worry about.
Yeah, I guess so.
And now, every time you go out to a shop, every interaction you have, either your existence is predicated on a certain set of choices about the dialogue tree in your RPG interaction with this person, what option you choose, or theirs is.
So this is
the thing, the cashier at Taco Bell or whatever.
So this is the thing where I feel obliged to comment as a non-autistic person. I don't experience...
We get it. Okay.
I don't experience dialogue in that way. Even as commodified as I am and under the force of capital, I just be out here chatting.
Yeah, and Adorno says that there are consequences to that.
I'm not saying there aren't, but the way you talk about how you make choices about how to talk to people is very strange to me.
And it was strange to Adorno, and he's explaining exactly why.
Okay.
Eleanor just sits under fluorescent light, and it's normal.
Well,
Never stims.
but there are situations that are like this for you. Work situations. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Now, when you're teaching, or
Oh,
when
yeah.
you're at
No,
a
1000%,
faculty
yeah.
meeting, or
Yeah.
when you are at a conference, or when you are interacting with other people in your field, there are options in the dialogue tree that are grayed out because
Yeah.
you don't have you don't get to choose
Yeah.
whether to say those things, even if they're true,
Yeah.
even if they're morally correct, because they can have a material consequence on you.
Every bad thing in my career has been because I said something I wasn't supposed to say.
So the thing that I'm saying is absolutely
Yes,
true, and
you're
you
right.
recognize
You're
it.
right. You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. I'm sorry.
Capitalism renders the worker autistic.
So then what we're seeing between this and, say, for example, between 1,000 Plateaus and, like, I think that there are different continental philosophers who are using their relationship to Freud to more or less diagnose the neuroses and the psychoses of the human race. And, like, there is a certain amount of schizophrenia, according to Deleuze, that comes about as a result of capital. There's a certain amount of autism that comes about because of what Adorno says. Like, there are all these different ways. And what we're saying is that capital is making you unwell. It is affecting your mental health, right? It can cause depression. It can cause anxiety. It can cause, sleep disturbance, weight gain, weight loss. It can cause addiction. It can cause all kinds of things because it is creating within you this conflict that makes it impossible for you to be good. And because you can't be good, you're sad. And because
Yeah.
you're sad, you're unhealthy.
Yeah.
I just want to say, for any new listeners, people who haven't checked out, our first episode where we kind of do the ABCs of our personal morality, I just want you to know that when we talk about autism, we are outsiders coming from bad faith. So
Yeah. I'm othering. I'm in the chat othering
yeah.
everybody.
This is externalized phobia, what I'm expressing right now. All right. You better not hear any different.
Okay. So, I would like to talk about, where is it? What do you think is his attitude towards the obligations of the bourgeoisie? Or if they have them?
I think that it depends on, like, he's taking a historical perspective on this stuff. I think in the period that he's describing, that nobody has an obligation to anybody.
Yeah.
Everybody is completely isolated and atomized.
Speaking of which, I just got a Google notification from LinkedIn job alerts that Mr. Beast is hiring executive assistant. So,
Yeah,
talk about no obligations to anybody.
I told him, it wasn't a firm 2 weeks. If he didn't find somebody, I would stay to help with the transition. But
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing that Adorno is discussing, right? Is that, like, when you have the smartphone, when you have the laptop everywhere, he even talks about how it's impossible to dwell.
Yeah.
Right? You can't live in your own house.
Yeah.
Partly because your house has been in part converted into your office.
Right, which is amazing. I was like thinking about that. I remember thinking about that part during COVID when we were stuck in our apartment in Logan Square. And I was like, oh, well, Adorno, he says that, like, you can't dwell, but, like, here I am dwelling, but not really, because I'm also working. And yeah, that was a really, yeah.
easily the closest point in our lifetimes where we've come to the position Adorno was in when he wrote this book.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Third floor apartment, Logan Square. Yeah.
Well, just the lockdown. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, between you and me, I would pick COVID over World War II any day of the
Yeah.
week. But
Yeah.
But there is some...
Luckily, we don't have to.
we get both.
I think one of the consequences of our contemporary economic situation is that, and I'm not obviously the first person to mention this, is that people are spending a lot more time at home. Right? Our economy is in the process of exploding and collapsing and exploding and collapsing. And so people are filled with anxiety and neurosis. And a lot of people don't like leaving the house anymore. And they'll get their meals delivered by DoorDash, and they'll have all of their...
And then complain about the DoorDash driver.
Yeah. And so once again, all human interaction is reduced to
Exchange.
exchange.
Yeah. I just feel like I have to talk about this. We have to. We need to talk about Donald Trump's Truth Social post on Easter morning.
Yeah, it is Easter today.
Yeah,
he is risen.
he is
Congratulations,
risen.
everybody.
Yay.
Yes. I got a feeling that this year he's gonna come back and it's all gonna be great.
Yeah. Andre, would you do the honors of reading aloud? You do the best Trump impression.
All right.
I mean, sorry, Taylor. I haven't actually heard yours. Maybe you do a better
Have
one.
I done a?
I don't know if I've ever
I
heard
don't
you do it.
believe I
I
have.
don't do a very good one. Andre does a good one.
I'm a guy. I'll do it. Here we go. Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the fucking strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah, President Donald J. Trump.
Thank you, Andre.
All
Great,
right.
excellent work.
So
A lot to
Everybody-
unpack here.
buy gas on Monday.
Is that the
Christ.
schizophrenia part? Is that what that is?
I think we can be a little bit more generous and just take him at his word, right? That has never bitten anybody in the ass when it comes to Donald Trump. That he has discovered the infinite light of the beauty of Islam and has been converted.
He's taking
and
a
has-
shahada.
Yeah.
Shahada.
And, we can only hope that it is the proximity to all of this conflict in the Middle East that is getting him more and more interested in Islam as a solution to his problems. I want to believe that, and so I'm going to.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, that's exactly what Adorno would want you to do. Yeah.
Oh, I don't care for the situation.
Okay, that's fair.
No, it's not great that the president on Easter morning is saying things like
I
this.
guess I'm just really. This is totally an enjoy your symptom moment, but I'm like, there are just new sentences coming out every day, new arrangements of words that have not seen the light of day ever. And I'm just, that's what keeps me going, is I'm interested.
That thing that Adorno was talking about tact going away.
Yeah. It's just gone. There's nothing.
No.
And nothing to replace it.
Nothing to replace it, but also that's our opportunity to replace it, right? This is
So, okay, but what do you mean our? Who's going to replace it? What are we replacing it with? How am I involved? What role? I give my students, they have team roles in their projects and they're making their prototypes. What's our role?
All right. Well, okay. So when Adorno talks about democracy, right, he's saying that the fact that you live in a democracy and still don't have any way of making your government moral is part of the machine that is driving you crazy. Mm-hmm. Right. And so when you go vote, it further deranges you.
Yeah.
Because you are, doing your civic duty, and it's supposed to, the point of democracy is that it's supposed to solve this problem, right? Power is held accountable to the people and therefore is pushed in the direction of morality, except that doesn't seem to be occurring. But we continue to do democracy because we believe in it, because it's our value, but it isn't working, right? We keep putting people in charge who have no morals. We're voting for immoral people.
Or amoral, depending.
Yeah.
that's the choice in America.
Yeah,
is
those are the
immoral
two
versus
parties.
Amoral.
Yeah. Amoral, immoral. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm a little bit surprised to hear your question of who and how and with what, because as educators, we're the who.
Yeah.
And whatever we do is the what, and the how is whatever we do to survive.
This podcast is the thing.
This is it? This is what's going to replace it?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a moral philosophy podcast. We are teaching the world how to be good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's cool.
We are in the post-apocalypse, and people are wearing various pieces of garbage as clothing, and worshiping figures that they barely remember from Saturday morning cartoons, and we are here to teach the people how to go back to caring about right and wrong.
Yeah.
Good for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get back to where you once belonged.
Yeah. I'm trying to teach my son about empathy lately. About putting yourself in someone else's shoes and trying to feel how they're feeling, and how would you feel if you were doing something that was loud when or how would you feel if someone else was doing something that was really loud and destructive or whatever when you were trying to do a spelling test or blah, blah, blah. And then, but like, he has this very interesting understanding of it. He's like, well, do they have a beautiful voice? Like, what is it? Are they singing a good song? Like, it's like, no. There's actually not, like, if you're trying to accomplish a task, it's actually not like,
Right.
you know what I mean? So I'm trying to like, I
Well,
don't
because
know.
no offense, and I've been this way. We've all been this way. Well, what I said was true, wasn't it? Type of
Yeah.
kid.
It's difficult to find those gray areas and to like dwell in them.
Well, I think that there's a conflict, right? On the one side, we want people to be free to believe what they want, and on the other side, we want people to act morally, right? And so this pluralistic society where there are different value systems that are in place in the same area, in the same communities, in the same institutions, coexisting with one another, right? And that democracy is supposed to be like the kind of safety valve that allows us to fine tune exactly the mix of like how those values manifest in terms of how the government rules over us, right? But that valve isn't functioning, right? Democracy isn't functioning, and so the whole thing has gotten out of whack, and the result is that we are more or less convinced that this pluralistic society actually has no values at all. Mm-hmm. It becomes a nihilistic society, despite the fact that it actually has an abundance of various thought systems.
Yeah.
In practice, it becomes nihilistic because nihilism is the ideology of capital.
Yeah. Degradation.
And speaking of nihilism, he talks about Nietzsche a lot in the book. And it makes me want to like look at, as possibly another episode that we do in the future, Genealogy of Morality by Nietzsche.
Yeah. I'd be interested in that, yeah.
Yeah. And so, but that comes before this. So it is possible that Adorno is like eating our lunch if we are like trying to... Does his analysis more or less like take the place of anything that we could say about that? Or like, what is the role of nihilism, right? Yeah, he seems miserable because he believes in things and he wants stuff, right? If like he criticizes philosophers who like seemingly coincidentally land on a philosophy of life that makes them look good,
Yeah.
right? They an enriching or like he's pointing at a kind of corruption or hypocrisy. We talked about hypocrisy last episode, right? And Adorno is very critical of hypocrisy, but he also assigns it to the bourgeoisie, right?
Yeah, well, he's conflicted because he knows his status as an intellectual is to sort of be between two worlds, which he literally is in exile. So like there's this line I really like where he says, the inhuman indifference and contempt instantaneously visited on the fallen idols of the culture industry reveals the truth about their fame, though without granting those disdainful of it any better hopes of posterity. The intellectual, then, discovering his secret motive to be illegitimate, has no other remedy than to record his discovery. So he's sort of like, he wants to be a member of like the proletariat, but finds his status as an intellectual to be sort of between worlds. And so the only thing he has to do is document that experience. And that's what this book is a document of the textures of his experience in this unlivable between worlds.
And in that place, he does identify something that would go on to, according to Chris Marker in Grin Without a Cat, completely cripple the labor movement and destroy the future of communism, which is this conflict between intellectuals and the working class.
Okay, so I don't think that intellectuals have that much power.
Well, in Grin Without a Cat, Chris Marker identifies the thing that they did, like they don't have a lot of power. But what they can do is they can take over a labor movement that's driven by workers and by the working class and intellectualize it and abstract it and turn it into a thing that just gets boys laid in dorm rooms. Yeah. Right. And in that way, use the institution of higher education to neutralize the revolutionary potential of the labor movement. Which is a phrasing that I take from Berger from the theory of the avant-garde.
Yeah. I guess I understand that and I see that as being real. I do think that that gets weaponized by anti-intellectuals who are neither laborers or intellectuals a lot. This is like very much a DSA guy thing to... So I'm suspicious of it on those grounds. But then again, as Adorno says, we're suspicious of everything.
Also, this is a conflict that more or less resolved itself 50 years ago. Like, whatever we feel about it, it happened a long time ago.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Right? Like, and it wasn't entirely because of, like, you could say that the reason that higher education and academia took over the left in the late 60s, especially in 1968, is because of the drastic increase in access to higher education in that period, right? 1965 Higher Education Act means people can take out loans in order to get a college degree, which was not true in the past. So that, widely expanded access to higher education in the United States. And then, like the people who were revolting against their governments in 1968 were, young people who were baby boomers, who were born at the end of World War II, and they were taking advantage of social programs in place in Europe as a result of the Marshall Plan, right? So there are historical circumstances that led to that transformation, right? Well, maybe now that higher education all over the world is falling apart and being destroyed, the labor movement can be once again taken over by workers.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see if that happens, if that's going to happen. I do like seeing those videos in San Francisco of ordinary people destroying those robots.
Yeah, I think that violence and property destruction are positive political forces when used towards ends that I approve of.
Yeah, exactly.
That
Yeah.
last bit's crucial.
Indeed.
So, okay, well, I wonder if sometime before we conclude, can we talk about, I'm coming at this from a curious perspective as much as I think it's something to float for our show. I also just want to hear from you two Adorno's relationship to, and I guess continental philosophy in general's relationship to the workers' movement. So for those of you at home, the conventional, here's how Marx thought it was going to go down.
Okay.
And obviously it didn't. We'll get into that. Right. The idea being that as these countries industrialize, the proletariat, this new social formation, gains consciousness of itself and organizes as a class and, violently overthrows the state to replace it with their own, whatever. And according to Orthodox Marxism, this is meant to happen in the places where industrialism happens first, right? We're talking about, Italy and Germany, right?
Yeah, moving away from agricultural production into industrial production, one thing it does is it just moves people physically closer together.
Yeah.
Right? You're standing next to the guy on the production line, and he has the same problems you have, so you recognize that you have a class consciousness, you have a class interest.
Right.
And this is what Marx talks about in the 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte, where he says that the reason that the smallholding farmers were not aware of their class interests is because they were geographically distant from one another, right? Each one of them thought they were the only one with the problems that they had, right? And it was the workers who were forced to be in close proximity to one another who developed the class awareness.
And so, but by the time that Adorno is writing this book, all of world communism is being carried on the back of Russia somehow, which was like, you know what I mean? These people who went from like peasants in their lifetime to like defending Stalingrad. This is not how Marxism, Orthodox Marxism, was meant to play out. And that is where I believe the Frankfurt School comes in, right? Where these Western European philosophers, nominally Marxists, are looking back and saying, well, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
Right? And what went wrong?
What went wrong, yeah.
And so I'm wondering if my understanding is that that what went wrong was that we underestimated the cultural impact of capital, right? And that what started off as purely economic forces that are driving the peasants from the land and, putting them in these positions to get like crunched up in the gears of industry and stuff like that. What started off as purely economic with time became cultural as well.
Well,
Maybe it was
Where
always
the values
already.
of the bourgeoisie became assumed to be the values.
a lot of argument among Marxists about whether or not Marx needed an update with the technologies of mass media that arise after industrialization is complete.
It's a shame that Adorno is so anti movies and mass media, because I actually think I would love to see his analysis of World War II movies as indexing this development.
Yeah, we watched a World War II movie last night.
I think it would be incredibly productive and helpful. And other people have done it, so it's like, whatever, it's fine. But like, I would love to see what he would have to say about Where Eagles Dare.
Yeah, we watched Where Eagles Dare.
I ain't no goddamn son of a
No
bitch.
bitch.
Right, now
Should
that was my first introduction to that phrase, right? Now that's a song that I see people perform at karaoke pretty much every time I go, right? And it's a banger. Everybody loves
I
that
love
song.
that song.
It's a great song. You better think about it, baby. Yeah, it's great. But like the title refers to the film, and the film refers to Richard III by Shakespeare. The line, Richard shows up. His brother is the king, and he's sick, and his other brother, George Clarence, is in prison, and Edward's wife, the queen, is ruling over everything, and Richard hates this, and he just shows up to a party and immediately starts complaining, very much like Adorno, right? And what he says is, the world has grown so bad that wrens make prey where eagles dare not perch. And what he's saying is exactly what Adorno is saying.
Cats
which is,
and dogs living together.
everything is bad, so much that the whole world is turned upside down. Black is white, right is wrong. And where eagles dare not perch, eagles are scared. Wrens, these little birds, they're getting their fill, right? So the good are hiding and scared, and the bad are prospering, right? My enemies are in power, and my heroes are dead, as it were. But the film says where eagles dare, right? Not where eagles dare not.
Okay.
Right? But it, like, the effect is that you get a sense that this is a film that is, like, marketing itself as this fun adventure story, right? Where eagles dare. We're going to go where eagles dare to go, which is, makes sort of sense because it's a film about trying to attack a castle on top of a mountain, right? And you think about the name, the Eagle Nest, which was what Hitler's bunker was called, where he killed himself in April. And then,
his birth month. Poor guy.
Yeah. Oh. No, we don't have to. We don't have to do that for him.
We don't gotta hand it to him.
No.
And we don't.
We don't.
But like the reason that these World War II movies, like Where Eagles Dare and Operation Crossbow and Dirty Dozen, all these ones from the 60s and 70s, the reason that they're different from the World War II propaganda films that were produced by Hollywood in the 1940s is because they reflect a more cynical, more pessimistic, more Adorno-like view of the war. Right? There are no heroes. Like the main characters of these films are typically criminals. Right? In the Dirty Dozen, many of the soldiers in the group are in prison for rape.
Yeah.
Some of them are in prison for murder of their comrades, murder of civilians.
Yeah.
These are bad guys, but in the 60s, there's this idea that, like, well, whatever. World War II was not a fight between good and evil.
Yeah, it's much more cynical.
It was a complex problem that each individual soldier had to solve on their own, and there was no right and wrong answer.
Yeah.
Even the Nazis, even the Nazi soldiers that you're interacting with, it's possible to find a situation in which you can compel one of them to join your side and help you defeat the Nazis and achieve your mission objectives. Right?
Yeah, they're just the it made me think about like the sheer level of you're having conversations with your enemies at all times, and that's part of the conflict, is like this conflict within yourself as you are speaking to your enemy as if he were an equal to you. And it reminded me, the other day I was at the airport and I was going through security, and the person who I had to like show my ID to and like do the whole thing in order to go through TSA was an ICE agent. And I chatted with, he talked to me, he's like, oh, it's a beautiful day. I was like, yeah, it's gorgeous outside. And we had this, and then I was like, I felt weird and bad about having that conversation with that guy, but like, I also needed to get home, and so I needed to go through that.
Once again, interpersonal relationships shaped by fascism and the power of capital.
Yeah, so yeah, it was really weird, and I felt bad about it. I was like, what was I gonna do? You know, like be like, fuck you, fascist. Like, no, it's like.
Now, when it comes to aphoristic writing about media and like, you know, I think
Barthes.
Roland Barthes, the 1960s is full of people like this. I was thinking of Guy Debord.
Yeah.
About Society of the Spectacle.
Or Hunter S. Thompson.
Right. I mean, there's a ton of it. Mm-hmm. In the 60s, there was a lot of this, right? Which is one of the things that makes this thing feel so like ahead of its time, right? Mm-hmm. Is that it has this attitude toward the discourse that is not so formal, right? It is much more...
Well, in the sense that it's intensely formalist, in that it is embodying the form of which it's critiquing and
but
destroying.
it doesn't have tact.
Yeah. No, I know. That's, yeah.
No, but it is important to bring up the awareness of the form of it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that the aphoristic nature of other things like Society of the Spectacle gives people this idea that it is multitudinous in the way that media and culture are. Mm-hmm. Right. And in that way, it reflects the discourse style of the world that it is attempting to intervene in, right? Mm-hmm. The world that we experience through the spectacle is an aphoristic world, right? We're flipping through cable channels.
Yeah, that's his point.
We're looking at tweets, 10,000 at a time, right? We're scrolling through TikToks. We're engaging with an enormous amount of small things instead of one big thing. Mm-hmm. And the result is that you don't really feel any kind of coherent experience of reality in the world. Mm-hmm. And Debord, I think, is more hopeful because he talks about détournement, right? Like, it is possible to intervene in the world of mass media simply by reproducing it and altering it and adding your own voice.
Ultimately, by satirizing it, by exposing and critiquing it.
Yeah, but rarely does that détournement succeed at criticizing the work. It's most effective, seemingly, when it is turning the work up against capital and fascism with, as a...
Yeah, like The People's Joker isn't really a critique of Batman.
Right.
Yeah.
It has much more important things to say about, how to live in a world that seems alienating and...
inhospitable to you.
Inhospitable to all human life.
Yeah. Which exposes something about Batman, and the sort of world of feelings and sociality.
Well, yeah. Batman has changed a lot as time has gone by. And, started out in the 30s, Bob Kane writing this thing that's about, like, what Cavalier and Clay proposes, which is that it is more or less about the children of Jews who were killed in the Holocaust coming up with a vigilante who will, enforce Moses's laws on the streets and stop these petty thugs and violent criminals from, smashing windows and robbing people, and, identifies the menagerie of villains in Batman as having the characteristics of 30s figures from European fascism, right? Like the fascist leaders like Mussolini and like Hitler, the things that they have in common is that they are charismatic and they're insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And those are the qualities of Batman villains.
Yeah.
Right? When we interact with the Joker or with Two-Face or with the Penguin, these are people who are behaving the way that fascist, dictators behave. They use violence irrespective of morality, to achieve what appear to be completely irrational, insane plans.
Well, that's also the way that comedians behave.
Tuesday is Bridge and Power Plant Day.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is today behaving like Two-Face would.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is that's how the way he uses humor is very Batman villain coded, which is to say it's in the style of a bad stand-up comedian.
But by the time we get to the 60s, and, it's the world of Guy Debord and it's the world of Roland Barthes, now Batman is, he's no longer a being in the world. He's no longer trying to do something that would be of value, like fighting fascism.
He's Adam West.
He's been abstracted into his aesthetic signifiers.
Yeah.
And he becomes camp.
Yeah.
And camp and kitsch are the things that sort of transform all of human culture in the 1960s into this neutralized thing that can no longer inspire people.
Yeah. I have mixed feelings about that, about camp as articulated in that way. I think that camp can be a sort of imagined community building thing.
I love camp.
I disagree heartily with Susan Sontag's notes on camp. I think it is weirdly a profoundly homophobic text. So I don't know. I'm a little recalcitrant.
Well, we see what happens with Batman. Batman is no longer this campy character and is now a darkly brooding Gen X stereotype who listens to Nirvana, right? That's Robert Pattinson's Batman.
Yeah.
Right? This is somebody who Adorno, Adorno and the Pattinson Batman are nearly the same person.
This is why he should have watched movies. He would have things to say about them. He would have meta narratives to compare them to. It's frustrating.
I know he would have ate up those Zootopia movies.
Oh, 100%. Do you know, this is off topic, but do you know the story of Baudrillard watching The Matrix?
No.
The Wachowskis were like, Baudrillard, we're so inspired by you when we made this film. It's all about your ideas. And so he watched the movie and he was like, so this has nothing to do with me. This is a great movie, but that's not, no. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of my work.
Yeah. Well, it's metaphorical.
Exactly.
Right. But I don't think it's crazy to imagine that if you're Baudrillard and you see The Matrix, you're like, this isn't going to explain anything to anybody.
Yeah.
He's like, it's great how you use the fighting stick as though it were bolted to the ground.
Yeah.
And does that little cool spin move on it, but
Yeah.
I don't know about the rest.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Do we have any ending points we would like to close on?
I would like to lament briefly that we did not get to his stuff on the girls and gays, because I think that is interesting and worth exploring.
Tell me what you thought.
Well, the number one thing, I mean, he talks a lot about obviously the social relations under capitalism, and one of the more prominent examples that he uses is the domestic partnership, right? And his view on it is pessimistic, and I think he sort of sees the whole thing as sullied, and the problem's intractable.
Are you referring to the part about divorce and how marriage is this island in a world where it's impossible for people to relate to each other, but the married couple, they can have these two people can have something. But then when they get divorced, it all gets exploded, and all the forces of capital come crashing down on them again.
Yeah, and I seem to remember that being in the later part of the book where he's talking about domesticity in a lot of different ways as well. And then there's also he draws a 1-to-1 equivalence, I think it's fair to say, between authoritarianism and, in the words of the late great Pope Francis, some froggy cane.
Yes.
And I feel like God specifically set me up to be unable to critique that in this setting. To be like, well, you can't say, as the token authoritarian and other things. I can't just be like, well, he was wrong about that. Because I'm like, I mean, They love those uniforms. I don't know. Anyways, so he does explicitly equate what he calls authoritarianism, and he uses the word totalitarianism a few times in this book, which made me roll my eyes. But like,
but that could be.
He didn't have the hindsight of.
That's a little, yeah.
It could be a question of translation.
Yeah.
Sure.
I also think my critique of that is that he's doing the thing that I was criticizing you autistic people for, which is the like menu of options and human interaction and speech, and I just think it's a very reductionist view of relationships and how they come about,
Now,
and the domestic sphere.
Right behind Eleanor, we have a poster for the film The Damned, and there in the 1960s, once again we go back to the 60s, there were all of these movies that were about, hey, you know what sucks about Nazis? They were gay.
Yeah.
Right? You look at Sallow, right? And, you know, or I guess with the Night Porter, it was like, they're not gay.
They're just freaks.
They're freaks.
Yeah.
Right. But the generalized 60s, like, criticism of the Nazis for being decadent.
Yeah. Which is always a reactionary talking point. Every time anyone ever says that an identity or sexual behavior is decadent, that is a dog whistle, and you are to ignore them. Yes.
I think maybe what they didn't have the language to engage with at the time, or perhaps they really were just expressing a kind of, unconscious homophobia. But I think that there is this thing that we see over and over again in critiques of fascism, which is that having everything you want robs you of your humanity. Mm-hmm. And when you have absolute power, you no longer have like coherent desires, right? And if we understand from this Lacanian perspective that being a human is being a desire,
You have to lack.
If you're a desiring machine and that desiring is your humanity, then when it is taken from you, your humanity has been taken from you.
Yeah.
Well, and does that explain the contemporary cultural phenomenon of like the dominant? I don't know how contemporary it is. It's probably 1,000 years old, but like of the dominant group cribbing their culture and identity from the group that they're oppressing.
Well, because they don't have anything.
Yes.
They don't. It's impossible for them to produce culture.
They don't have any.
For the same reason that AI can't produce
don't have
culture.
taste.
AI doesn't have humanity. It doesn't have things that it desires. It's not perverse.
Yeah.
Does this go back to Mr. Hegel's dialectic of the master and the unpaid intern?
Yeah. It always goes back to that. But it's if you can't desire, you can't make anything.
Can we do an episode on the master-slave dialectic?
Sure. Sounds great.
I think that would be like...
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, we're gonna have a bunch of ideas now. That's cool.
Love it.
I think that Adorno was right about most things. What do you guys think?
I disagree about the way he criticizes mass media. I think that it, for him, really just comes down to a lack of imagination.
Yeah.
He doesn't like media. He talks about not liking the movies.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like music.
Agreed, yeah.
And he doesn't like the theater. And
it's not that he doesn't like music. I mean, he does like music to an extent. I've read a bunch of his stuff.
he doesn't like anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to have a certain amount of faith.
But he's not like an AI guy. Like, he is like creative and productive.
Well, yeah, he's funny.
Also, hating can be a productive force too.
Hating can be very
Yes.
productive.
And which is-
Deanna Troi said as much in an episode of
Yes,
The Next
exactly.
Generation.
But I don't think, do these AI guys, their hating is not productive. Their hating is annihilative.
Correct. Correct. I have a lexicon. There's two kinds of hating. There's hating for hate and there's hating for love, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like, I always say, like, and everybody says this, like, you can't actually effectively make a good satire of something you hate. You have to also love it. Hence the People's Joker. You can't, like, I'm trying to think of an example of this, but,
Well, okay, here's an example. I mean, like, Christianity can't even really exist in America, in the 20th century and onward, because Christianity is based on the concept of loving people.
Yeah.
And you can't love people under capitalism.
Yeah.
And, Adorno spends a significant chunk of the book explaining exactly how and why that's true. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, if you can't love other people, then how are you going to love yourself?
that's a wrap.
Bye-bye.